Hello and welcome to Save Your Sanity. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler and I'm delighted that you're here. If you have returned because you've heard something of value before, you're so welcome. And if you're new, I'm delighted that you've found me. So tonight we're going to be talking about something you may not have had a word for. You've certainly felt what it's all about, but you may not have had the word for it. So we're going to be talking about how to handle the emotional abuse of microaggressions using the PWR response that I've developed. So we're going to talk about these microaggressions and find out exactly what that is and how it's impacting you on a regular, maybe even daily basis, because that can be very, very difficult. So I'm glad you're here at Save Your Sanity podcast. And if you'd like to support the work, you are welcome to go to saveyourSanityPodcast.com and hear more episodes. And if you'd like to support it monetarily, you can go to patreon.com/saveyoursanity. Patreon.com/saveyoursanity. There you can offer $1 or $5, whatever you like, on a one-time or monthly basis to defray the cost of bringing the show to you. So that's there for you. And if by chance you're listening and you think, I'd really like to talk to Dr. Shaler, you can do that. I have a new client one-time offer at beaclient.com. So let's get that out of the way and let us talk about microaggressions. And these are words and behaviors, looks, gestures that they feel like an attack. But most healthy people, when they feel that, they think, oh no, that couldn't have been it. These are the giving people. These are the people who leave room for doubt, give you the benefit of the doubt, go the extra mile with you, healthy, responsive people. So it feels like an attack. And so maybe you justify or rationalize it, maybe even make an excuse for it. But when it starts to be frequent, when it is happening in various ways, maybe, but little jabs here and there, put downs, tear downs, then these microaggressions add up. So I went to the Cambridge Dictionary to find out what they said a microaggression was. And it says a small act or remark that makes someone feel insulted or treated badly, and can be combined with other similar acts and remarks that over time cause emotional harm. So that's very general. So I thought, how can we take that apart? And what are these things designed to do? How are they trying to get under your skin? What's really going on? So the small act or remark that makes someone feel insulted or treated badly, that can combine with other similar acts or remarks over time to cause emotional harm. So what do those actually look like? Well, one of them is control. That they want to are designed to exert some control. That could be that sideward glance. Do you ever have a mom who gave you the side eye, like, what do you think you're doing over there? Or that look where they go black-eyed and you know that you're in trouble. These are microaggressions, and they're designed to control you. They also can be designed to manipulate you. So the look is, if you don't do it my way, if you don't agree with me, you're in trouble. And so a microaggression can show up that way. One thing for sure they're going to do is erode your self-confidence. Because over time you start being on edge. Is there going to be a microaggression coming my way? Do I have to get my exercise by walking on eggshells? Do I need to be hypervigilant? Do I need to be second-guessing everything that I do? Because the idea is to erode your self-confidence. They want to make you dependent on them, and they want to tell you who you are. And so they will tell you things that are not at all true, but they are intended to erode your self-confidence. And that happens a lot when you're with a hijackal. For those people who are new, hijackal is my trademark term for people who hijack relationships for their own purposes and then relentlessly scavenge them for power, status, and control. And so hijackals like to erode your self-confidence because they think it puts them at the top of the pile and puts you down lower, and they like to do that frequently. The idea then is to diminish your self-worth so that you start believing what they're saying is wrong with you. And that's where we fall short often, because if you're in a relationship with someone and you think that perhaps you're sharing, perhaps you're vulnerable, perhaps you've been able to be vulnerable, you've been truthful, you've been honest, you've shared some things, and then they use it against you to diminish your self-worth. And these are things we've talked about before in other episodes. But in microaggression, they're just doing these little jabs, these little put-downs, these little looks. That little chin out and kind of look that is a control look. It's a microaggression. They also want to subdue you. They want you to be walking on those eggshells so that they can keep you careful all the time, always trying to figure out the lay of the land, always trying to say, am I safe? And hopefully you won't take too much risk. That's what they're thinking. Like, don't get too far out of line there. Let me get you back. Narcissistic hijackal parents are like that. Abusive parents are like that. I brought you into this world and I'll take you out. That's pretty obvious, not much of a microaggression, but it certainly is aggressive. So they want to subdue you. They want to get you under their control, to have you stop thinking for yourself and adopt their view of you. And that's very dangerous because their view is definitely slanted in favor of themselves. So they want to be on top of that hill, and they want you to be under it, not just at the bottom of it, but under it. Therefore, that need to dominate, that need to be the top dog in the relationship, that need to be the one who is the arbiter of what is right, what is accurate, and what will happen. And so microaggressions can help with that in their quest to dominate and control you. And of course, the eventual result is it will exhaust you and leave you with nothing to come back with, at which point then they complain that you're no fun. But they've taken everything from you. They've taken everything out of you. You've given all that you have, and none of it has been well received. None of it certainly has been none of the good stuff has been reciprocated, except when they really want something. So these microaggressions, it's the little bits every day, the tiny ways in which they do things, the things that they say, the things they don't say, the things they refuse to say, the ways they won't validate you, but the snide ways that they will invalidate you. And they particularly like to use these microaggressions in public. Right? In public, where they think they can get away with it. They think they can say something to you and you won't be willing or able to respond. They think they can get away with it. And that's really, really nasty. Because they think, oh, well, you're going to behave with some decorum and you're not going to confront them in the moment. So in public, it's a way to make slights. And, they'll say something offhand to you and it hurts you. The microaggression lands, it hurts you, and yet you don't know whether you should speak up or not. And if you do speak up and you say, oh, that hurt, they'll say, oh, I was just joking, or you're too sensitive, or can't you take a joke? And they will make it your fault. And that's why they're called microaggressions, because they don't make a big to-do. It's just a lot of little pins being stuck in you over and over and over and over. And every time a pin is stuck in you, you bleed, and pretty soon you're little short on blood. Nothing big, major, no artery cut, just constant pricks and pokes that takes you down and wears you down. So very, very difficult. And they're kind of different than insults or insensitive comments or generally jerky behavior that people can engage in occasionally, because they're not occasional. They're painful and they're frequent, and hijackals love to employ them. They love to use them. It's part of their vocabulary. It's part of their repertoire. It's part of their arsenal, and they use them with aplomb, and it's really hard. It's really hard on you because you don't know whether to step up and say something or whether it's too small to comment on. That's what they're counting on, that you're going to think, oh, well, that was just small. It was just not worthy of a response. But because they build up over time, it is worthy of a response, and I'm going to help you know how to respond to it after we really explore what these microaggressions sound like and look like. And a hijackal has marginalized you. You know, they have endeavored to get you away from family and friends and depend on them. And they may have done the big thing, you know, the big romantic thing. We're getting married, so let's move to a new city, state, or country, and let's start fresh, and let's have all this. But when you're with a hijackal, if you go for that, you will soon find that you've been isolated and marginalized away so that they have access to you and control over you. And so the hijackal has already marginalized you, if only, and I don't mean to make light of it, but as opposed to all the ways they could have marginalized you, if only in the way that they have marginalized you emotionally because you're second guessing yourself. And once you start to second guess yourself, you know, should I be hurt by that? Is that what they really mean? By the time you've had those thought processes, that microaggression may have gone by and you haven't done anything with it. But it's the everyday microaggressions, like the slights and the indignities and the put downs and the offhand remarks and the blindsiding remarks and the looks. You know, the side eye, the black eyes, the hijackal smirk of contempt that I've talked about in other episodes. All of those things are microaggressions. And when you start to realize they have a name and they are intended to be small so you won't call them out, I hope you'll become more aware of what is happening and see them for what they are, because as we go on with today's episode, I will give you ways to respond to them. Really, microaggression is psychological warfare. And microaggressions are weaponizing their anger. Microaggressions are weaponizing their desire to win, and they will grab anything they can to beat you down. So it's really important to recognize those. So, you know, after the podcast today, maybe take a few minutes to say, what are all the small ways, all the frequent but small, questionable ways, the offhand ways that the hijackal gets to me? Just be kind of taking stock on that, because microaggressions intentionally communicate hostility. And sarcasm falls into that category. I think sarcasm is the lowest form of anger. And it's wielded like a weapon often. And, you know, people will make sarcastic remarks, and then when you're upset with them, then they come back with that same line, oh, I was just kidding, or your skin is too thin, or you should know better than that. And it always comes back to the blame shifting and comes around to be your fault, right? But know that microaggressions are intentionally intended to communicate hostility. They do not plan to do the microaggressions, but it's how they communicate hostility. And they may not be intentionally saying, I'm going to be hostile right now, but they intend to make you small and keep you small and put you down. And then there's a secondary part called microinvalidation. And microinvalidation are where they deny your feelings and your thoughts and your experiences. They just deny them. Like, who cares what you think? Or you're absolutely wrong. Or you don't think that. Or that one horrible thing that I remind you of frequently. If anybody ever says to you these words, know that it's time to think about them differently and see them in the rearview mirror. When they say, I know you better than you know yourself. That is just the hugest red flag. If someone ever says to you, I know you better than you know yourself, no, that is not true. Now, you may know that you need to know yourself better or you need to have some clarity, but they're in the business of taking that clarity away by creating uncertainty and chaos. So then when they say something like that, I know you better than you know yourself, they've worn you down, and you might start thinking maybe they do. Don't think that. No, resist that. They do not know you better than yourself. You know yourself, and you deserve your time and energy to know yourself better, to speak out about yourself, to speak up for yourself. Those are very important things, because these microaggressions and microinvalidations, these are like I was talking about last week when I was talking about emotional brainwashing. These are like the drip, drip, drip of water torture. You know, 1 drop doesn't mean too much. 2 drops might mean too much. But by the time you get to 7, 8, 10 drops, you are beginning to feel the pain. You are beginning to feel what's happening. And after you've had 100 or 100,000 of them, it has eroded you. It has just eroded you. And the good news is you can come back from that. And I'm always here to help. You know, if you ever want my help, just use the new client link at beaclient.com and you can have my help. But, you know, what's important is to understand that this is psychological warfare, and it's also abuse. It is emotional abuse. It is psychological abuse. And once you start seeing these things as what they really are, then you can begin to see how frequently they happen and get some clarity around that, because it's so important. So that's what's up with microaggressions and microinvalidations. But what do you do about them? So in my book, Kaizen for Couples, I talk about a technique called the Personal Weather Report, the PWR. And how does the Personal Weather Report apply here? Well, in Kaizen for Couples, I talk in 2 chapters. One about how to give a personal weather report in chapter 6, and in chapter 7, how to respond to a personal weather report. That book is for people who have an opportunity to create a healthy relationship even when it's gone sideways for a bit. But all the techniques in there are ones you want to have in your toolbox. So go over to Amazon and you can find Kaizen for Couples, and it's spelled Kaizen, Kaizen for Couples. Or if you happen to be Canadian as I am, Kaizen for Couples. Kaizen, and you can find it in print or as a download at Amazon. But in there, I talk about the Personal Weather Report, and this is a very important response to master, really important. So let me explain what it is. Because it brings you to be able to affirm yourself, and that's important. So the Personal Weather Report is based in this, that you honestly come to a place where you know that you deserve to take up space and draw breath. And that's not simple. You know, if you come from a hijackal family, had a hijackal parent, you've been in a previous hijackal relationship, or you're in one now, you may have lost sight of the fact that you have the right to take up space and draw breath because people have been trying to marginalize you. So first of all, you have to get clear that you do deserve to take up space and draw breath. And because you do, you then have the right to say what you think, feel, need, want, prefer, remember, as long as you do not mention another human by name or pronoun. So you're not talking about anybody else. You're giving a weather report of what's going on within you. And that is not as easy as it sounds. Many people say, oh, yeah, I get that. And then when they start to practice, they realize it's not easy because we say you a lot, or we refer to the other person, we refer to other people. And that is not something we're an expert on other people. We're an expert on ourselves. So learning to give a personal weather report is generally a fabulous thing to do for all people, so that you can have healthy interactions and feel good and strong within yourself. But to be able to do it in a situation where you are experiencing a microaggression or a microinvalidation, now you know what they are. So now how do you do this? Well, you have a right to assert yourself. And as I said, you have the right to say what you think, feel, need, and want, prefer, remember, as long as you don't mention another human by name or pronoun. And that's assertiveness. To just know you have the right to take up space, therefore you can say, here's what's going on with me. And then refrain from talking about anybody else. So you have that right. And when you deliver a personal weather report, it has to be neutral and genuine, because you're talking about yourself, not about anybody else. So somebody says something that's a microaggression, like, oh, well, you always look tired. And you might say, well, some days I do. Some days I don't. Today I'm not feeling tired. That's a personal weather report. You see, he didn't say anything about, how dare you, don't talk to me like that. None of that went on. You just simply gave a personal weather report. And I have a video on the YouTube channel for relationship help. I have videos on the personal weather report, as well as it being in Kaizen for couples. So you have that right to speak up. And to be able to say, sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I'm not tired, but right now I don't feel tired and I don't think I look tired. That's your opinion. That's your right. Maybe you're not ready to say those things out loud. I could just about hear the wheels turning for someone listening, saying, oh, well, I got to speak up at that point. Maybe you want to practice in your head giving that personal weather report when you hear the microaggressions. And then begin to give them voice when you know that you can do it neutrally and genuinely, because you're speaking only about yourself. And as you do that, as you say those things, you're affirming yourself. You are actually saying, I exist, and here's what I think, and here's what I feel, and here's what I want, and here's what's going on inside me. Here's my process. So instead of saying to someone, you're being disrespectful, and it may sound like, not a big difference, but it's hugely different in intent, you can say, I feel disrespected right now. Because that's going on within you. And if they can say, are you telling me I'm disrespectful? No, I'm just telling you I feel disrespected right now. And you have to own it. Absolutely own it. And after you've been depressed and put down and worn down and torn down and you're exhausted, that may be the first thing that you can start to do is just, there's a microaggression. It's not true. And then you practice in your head with the PWR response. No, actually, that's not true. What's true for me is this. And then you may come to the place of saying something. And saying it out loud. And then you begin to affirm yourself and say, I'm not going to have this, and I'm not going to take this without at least meeting it with some energy of honesty from within myself. So this becomes a way that you bring yourself back to wholeness, that you don't allow the blow to come and you feel smaller, you meet it. And, I feel strongly that now and again, and in the appropriate places, we have to learn to turn on our teflon. You know, these people, these hijackals, these people who want power over, are going to use words and actions and gestures to hurt you. But if you observe that hijackal and say, all right, I know this about you, that's what you're going to do, and I'm not going to take it personally any longer, I'm going to turn on my teflon. And it's going to slide off me. I am no longer going to be hurt by what you say, because what you say is not accurate about the truth for me. So I am not going to agree with you, and I am going to stand my ground and say what is true for me. Now, it might take some gumption, as I said, or you might be practicing in your head for a while, but it's very powerful. So start affirming internally and work up to doing it verbally, actually giving voice to it, quietly, neutrally, and authentically. And that will make a big difference. But then you have to keep at it. You can't just stop, because they're not going to like it. You know, what? No, I told you how it is. No, actually, that's not true for me. They're not going to like it. But you're not doing it to be in their face. You're doing it to bring yourself back to wholeness. And it's so very, very important, because microaggressions and microinvalidations are toxic, and they're cumulative. They build up over time, and that is not healthy. It's not a healthy environment for you to be in. It's not a healthy environment for your children to be in, not a healthy environment for your children to be witnessing. So it becomes very important for you to consider that you need to respond or prepare to respond to microaggressions. Now, if tonight is the first time that you've actually thought about all those little things as microaggressions, I hope you will continue to think about that. And again, with the microinvalidations, the tiny ways that they pull at you, they tear at you, that they want to take a piece from you, that they want to make you bleed a little bit, just over and over and over and over. And it's depleting, and it's demoralizing, and it's diminishing, it's discounting, and it's denying your feelings. And that's a microinvalidation. So I hope that this makes ultimate sense to you, and you will begin to use the personal weather report in order to begin affirming inside what you really think and feel, and then beginning to give it voice. And again, that caveat, they're not going to like it. Don't expect them to like it or be grateful for it. They don't want to. They want to be that hit and run. They want to hit you with it and then run. They do not want you to say something back. So don't be surprised if they get a little angry or a little, who do you think you are? But you're taking back your space. You're taking back what is accurately yours. So do that. Really do that. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, and I hope this has been useful to you. You know, you can find me at forrelationshiphelp.com, F-O-R, relationshiphelp.com. You'll find my blog there. You'll find the membership site there, the support circles there. You'll find the podcast there. You'll find videos there, articles. Everything is there for you, including my checklists, my relationship checklists. So just click on free checklists when you go to forrelationshiphelp.com. And until we talk again, take very good care of yourself, because you matter, and you will not any further tolerate microaggressions and microvalidations without having internal dialogue to say, that's not true about me. And I wish you well with getting up to speed with being able to say that out loud. Take good care. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. And let's see who's in the room. Hi, Stella. Nice to see you back. Oh, here's someone. For what? Oh, you've been on the YouTube channel. I recognize that. I just responded to a comment that you made. So let's see. She or he, I don't know who it is. Oh, said, I was 18 when I married my husband. He lied and told me he was 29, but he was really 34. He moved me from Baltimore to Florida, and 4 kids later, I'm still stuck and I feel like I can't breathe. Oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. That's not good. The lying thing was a really poor start. But then you were isolated, right? You were marginalized, Baltimore to Florida, and you have 4 children, and you say you're stuck. Now, stuck can be for many, many reasons. It could be financial, it could be religious, it could be a feeling of having no way to create an income of your own. I don't know what that is, but oh, you went on later and said, the last time I tried to leave, he was supposed to take me to the airport, but he just drove around instead. He had me pack my things, cry because I was leave the kids, and he watched us all cry together. Me and my kids. Then he turned around and just drove around the city instead of taking me to the airport. I'm just exhausted and want to talk again about leaving with him. I would suggest to you that you do not talk to him about leaving. You make an empowered plan, and I mean that because it's important to feel empowered before you leave. And that's what I lead my clients through, is recognizing what's going on, realizing the impact it has, and then starting to realign their thinking and releasing some ideas that they have about it, then moving into recovery and rebuilding their lives. And in the doing of that, I tell them that if you know you're going to leave and you're with a hijackal, you just want to get yourself in the best shape possible in every possible way, and then make your plans without saying anything to anybody, and then enact your plan. It's never a good idea to poke a hijackal, and by the same token, it's never a good idea to tell a hijackal that you're leaving, because you've experienced it. You know, he pretended to go along with the plan. You just have to take that into your own hands, unfortunately. So I hope that you get some help with that. Stella says, the hijackal used to text me his microaggressions, saying I'm delusional living in fantasy land and use my head as not an ornament. His mother was texting these awful things. That's terrible. That's terrible, but that's a good example of microaggressions. They're just constantly picking at you, constantly tearing you down, taking little pieces. Really, really difficult. And they say the nastiest things, don't they? They really do. So hard. So I hope you found a way to combat that. I hope that that's what happened for you, Stella. And now you don't have the benefit of having to defend yourself against his microaggressions. Lily, I haven't seen your name before here, so welcome. They don't like it when they themselves are invalidated. Oh, no, they don't. And you know, one of the things that they have children for is because they want to be validated by the children, making them look good. So that's another piece of that puzzle. They definitely don't stand for being invalidated. They don't even stand for something that has a possible interpretation of invalidation. They're already in defense mode. If you even something that you say could possibly be taken as an invalidation, they're already angry and defensive. So you're absolutely right, Lily. Karudaniru. They think that I should seek their permission for everything. They're awful. Oh, yes, hijackals want the ultimate power. They want you to ask them for permission to breathe almost, because they have to be in control of everything. And it is awful, and they are awful. And of course, everybody who is a healthy human will always at some point put in, but what if it's me? Or what if they're right about me and all the things that they say? You know very well that it's good to have self-reflection, but it actually isn't the case. Because of my episode on blame shifting, how when you tell them that they're doing something that you don't approve of, how quickly they turn it around and make it your fault, your problem. that, you know, you're the one with the problem, not me. Well, that's that kind of thing. And like you say, they think you should seek their permission for everything, as though they're the dominant one. They're the parent and you're the child. And there's no equity in that. And a healthy relationship has those three things from episode 115: equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. And there is no equality in having to ask permission to do things when you're an adult. Now, of course, that's different than making an agreement with somebody. You know, talk something through and make an agreement that you're going to do things in a certain way. That's different. But having to ask their permission, you spend money, go places, be with your friends, take a course. No, that's not the way adults interact. It's not the way healthy adults interact. And we all know that hijackals are not healthy. So you could expect to have that kind of thing. Okay. They hate when you gray rock or ignore them. Yes, they don't like that. Ignoring them is never a wise thing to do because that just enrages them. Gray rock you may have a little bit more success with. For those of you who don't know what gray rock technique is, it's to be about as interesting as a gray rock on the side of the road. So you're genuinely there with them and you're genuinely listening, but you give responses that are neutral. Like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, you want that. You know, you're not engaging, you're not furthering the conversation, but you are giving a direct indication that you're listening and you're present. They don't like it because you don't make them right. They don't like the gray rock technique because they don't think that you are endeavoring to give them what they want. They certainly don't like that, but it can be very effective to keep yourself safe, and that's a good thing. Estella says, I'm away from the hijackal, but processing all this to me. They did hurt, but your channel is helping me. I'm so glad, because they do. I mean, of course they do. We don't want people to think poorly of us or to complain about us or say bad things about us or defame our character or belittle us in front of our children or our friends or our family or go behind our back and do a smear campaign and tell other people that we're crazy or that, well, I'm doing a good thing because I'm keeping him or her away from the family because we know he or she has problems. I mean, all that kind of crazy things that go on. And so it is very hurtful, and it does take time, and do give yourself that time, Stella, because processing that does take time, because you probably spent a lot of time actually believing it, or you've worn down so far that you're not sure if it's true, and now you have to rebuild yourself. So give yourself that kind of time. Gwen says, my husband often responds with a very dismissive, brief verbal sound when I tell him something of interest that I want to share. Is that just a guy thing or microaggression? He is difficult. Well, I know what you're meaning. You get the harump or, that kind of thing. Well, if you have somebody's full attention, they're not going to do that. But if you have their partial attention, that is an attempt to say, I'm here, but I'm hearing you, but I'm not listening. Hearing is what your ears do, but listening means your ears are engaged with your brain. So when people make dismissive comments like that, they are usually just placating you and they're having a conversation in their head. So ask a question at that point and see what's going on, because it may definitely be a microaggression. I don't want you to be able to say that I don't respond to you, but how I respond to you is dismissive and disinterested and unengaged. So you don't want that to go on. Stella says, do these hijackals get worse with age and their abuse? Yes, they do, until a certain point when they kind of hit a plateau and kind of stay that way. But one of the things that I'm noticing, and I've had thousands of clients in all parts of the world, and what I'm noticing is that there are many of them that they're having spent so much time in rage. I notice a disproportionate amount of them seem to go into dementia. And then their rage shows up in that format. And that's kind of difficult too. I don't have any research to back that up. It's just what I notice. But yes, they do get worse as they age until about a certain point, somewhere in their 40s, 50s. Then it kind of usually tapers off, and that's the way they are. Or they lose their ability to have sexual intimacy, and then they get very rageful and resentful, or, different things can happen later. But generally, they get worse until they're about 50, and then they plateau. They don't get better. So don't get your hopes up that it'll go in the opposite direction. No, hijackals are hijackals are hijackals. Occasionally, someone will come to me and they'll say, I think I'm a hijackal. And they may indeed have hijackal behaviors because they were raised in a hijackal home. They're not hijackals, but they have some hijackal behaviors, their go-to behaviors when they get afraid or they're shamed or blamed. And they're not really hijackals. Real hijackals do not come for help, and if they do come for help, it's so they want to tell a story about, I went for help, and usually they say, and the therapist was useless, and not that they didn't participate or they weren't honest, but they do get worse with age to a certain point, and then they plateau. Is racism the offspring of narcissism? Well, it certainly has pieces of that. There's certainly a supremacy aspect to racism that shows up as an aspect of narcissism. You say they seem to be superior, so they use their ethnicity to impose further harm on others. Yes, there is that feeling of being superior, the feeling of being entitled, the feeling of being right, the feeling of being righteous, and certainly that will show up in racism. It's interesting you bring that up because the origin of the term microaggression came from the literature on racial inequality, that people will do microaggressions saying, well, you don't look that gay. That's a microaggression, to marginalize an already marginalized population. So the same thing is true in racism. So that's a very, very good question. For what said, I'm so happy to have found this page. I thought I was crazy. You're not crazy, but they were dedicated to making you think you might be. So I'm really happy you found it too. Going to their home is like the in-law variety show. I am the audience, not part of the group. Well said. Yes. If you happen to have hijackal in-laws, I did a whole program on this. Just go to YouTube or the podcast on narcissistic in-laws, hijackal in-laws, because they are a breed apart. You will realize where the hijackal in your life got their tendencies, either to be like them or to be very unlike them. But they do have a thing going on. Like you say, the in-law variety show, you just watch them doing their thing, and they isolate and marginalize and exclude you, for sure. Stella says, is there always a final discard? Thank you so much for your wisdom and compassion. You're welcome. And is there always a final discard? Well, hopefully it's you who discards them. But be grateful if they discard you. You may feel that they made you less than and it was your fault or something. But the discard is a discard. When I'm working with my clients, I tell them, unless there's physical or sexual abuse, let's work together while you're in the relationship to empower you to make good choices and to feel good when you leave, taken care of. Because if you're going to discard the hijackal, as I said earlier, don't tell them, just do it. Or if you're going to be discarded, you get them to discard you, or they think they're having a powerful moment and they discard you, celebrate anyway. Because now you are on your pathway to freedom from someone behaving in these ways. So there isn't always a final discard, and here's the reason. That whether you leave them or they leave you, they do not like losing supply, and you are their supply. Their supply of validation, of adoration, of someone who does what they tell them to, someone who takes their abuse, and they want that supply. They need that supply. Now, a good number of hijackals are always grooming supply. So those are the overt, charming ones who are out there, whether they're grooming supply by the wait staff in the restaurant, or someone they work with, or someone in the community, or in the church, or in an organization. They're always grooming someone just in case, because they always need to have someone. They don't do well in isolation. So they're always grooming. But if they realize that they lost the main supply, they will circle back around and try to what we call hoover you. Hoover you back up like the vacuum cleaner. Hoover you back up and get you back in your place and supplying them. So the idea of a final discard is seldom the case, because they will come back. Unfortunately, they do. So I would say seldom a final discard. Lily says racism and also belittlement of women. Oh, yes, of course, that goes with it, because that's an isolating and marginalizing behavior. Stella says, he attacked my character. I never looked back. Good for you. That's a great stand you took for yourself. JJ, hello. I haven't seen you before. My son is very naive and young, and I feel bad he lives with his narcissistic father who behaves like poo-poo to others. Yeah, very bad role model. I'm sorry that that's the case for your son too, because that's the only image of a man that he's seeing. And that's the one that's closest to him, the one he's closest to, and he's bonded subconsciously to. It's not a choice that he made. He was born into it. So I'm sorry that that's happening. Did you lose custody in court? Is there a reason that he lives with his father? Maybe perhaps at some time you can change that. And Lily says, when they get older, that grooming seems less effective. Yeah, they're not so charming and good looking anymore, and sometimes they have dysfunctions. So that they get very angry about that. They get very angry when their grooming isn't working anymore, when they become invisible to women, or women that they're attracted to are not attracted to them, and they get sort of dismissed rather than engaged with. So you're absolutely right. Their grooming abilities are diminished as they get older. So that's the end of the comments. Know that from the time you press send on a comment till I see it is 20 seconds. So as I say every week, I will wait for another 20 seconds to see if anything else shows up. In the meantime, you can always talk to me. Go to beaclient.com. That's a full 1-hour session for $97 to get acquainted and find the fit, so I know that I can help you and you feel that I can help you. It's always there for you at beaclient.com. Also read the Kaizen for Couples book, because it will show you what a healthy relationship is and what it can become. And all the strategies and techniques that I've ever taught couples are in there. So it's a good book to have so that you know what to compare the hijackal relationship with. And read Escaping the Hijackal Trap for sure, so that you can get out of the relationship. Stella says, once you see you dated a hijackal, everyone seems to be a hijackal. You get afraid that they are, don't you? You get very wary. You get heightened awareness of little things that they do. And you may think they're microaggressions because you've seen them before. And so it really takes a little while to learn another person. But remember, the Hijackal's love bomb. They're going to show you the best they've got. So keep yourself in reserve. Don't throw yourself into any new relationship. Just observe. Just be on the midline there and just observe over a long time. Make no commitments. One of the things that the love bombing phase is that a hijack will always say to you, oh, I just know we're meant to be together. Let's get married or move in or have a baby or something. See that for what it is. It is a huge red flag. A huge red flag that says, I'm in a hurry. I can't keep up this act forever. So let's get on with this so I can have control over you. And some of them can keep the act up for a couple of years. But slowly it begins to diminish in their ability to cover up who they really are. Thank you so much for hosting this talk. It's so nice to talk with people who understand. You're so welcome. I hope I'm not mismanaging your name, but Kira Deniru, I'm glad you were here. I'm glad that you found this. It's every Monday night at 7 o'clock, except rarely I don't do one. But by subscribing, either on the YouTube page or on the Facebook page, you will then get a notice every time what the topic is for Monday evenings. You'll also get notices of other things that I'm going to do live, so you'll always be in the loop. Well, I'm so glad you were here. I'm so glad that you feel free to come and ask your questions and make your comments, because everybody benefits from that happening. So I'll look forward to seeing you, and bring your friends along too, and we'll talk again next week. Take care.